I'm focusing on the Classifiermixin class from the Sklearn library. It's a blueprint for creating classifier objects. We'll look at the methods that must be available in any class that uses this blueprint. This is a multiple-choice question. I'm going to test your knowledge of which methods are always there in a class built using the Classifiermixin. The question asks which methods are guaranteed to be present in any classifier class built using the Classifiermixin blueprint. Think of it like asking, what tools are always included in this toolbox for building classifiers? The fit, x, y, method is for training the classifier. I feed it data, x, and their corresponding labels or answers, y, and the classifier learns from this. This method is essential, like teaching a dog a new trick, it's a must-have. The predict, x, method lets the classifier make predictions. Once it has learned, fit, you give it new data, x, and it predicts the labels or answers. It's like asking the trained dog to perform the trick, it's the core function. The score, x, y, method assesses how well the classifier performs. I feed it data and their labels, and it gives me a score. While very useful, it's not always part of the basic blueprint. It's like a bonus feature, not a fundamental tool. The transform, x, method is for data transformation, not classification. It's from a different blueprint, not relevant to this question. Think of it as a tool from a completely different toolbox. This refers to the Classifiermixin class in Sklearn, which provides common methods for classification models. This is a quiz testing your knowledge of the Classifier Mixin class in Sklearn, a popular Python library for machine learning. We'll focus on identifying the methods guaranteed to exist in any class that inherits from Classifier Mixin. This is an abstract base class. In Sklearn, think of it as a blueprint or a contract. It defines the essential methods that any class claiming to be a classifier must implement, not what methods are used in practice. It doesn't do anything by itself, it's a template. This question directly asks you to identify methods that are always present in classes inheriting from Classifier Mixin. I need to check each method provided to see if it's part of that contract. This method trains, or fits, the classifier using data x and corresponding labels y. It's fundamental. Every classifier needs to be trained. It's a required method in the Classifier Mixin contract. This is the core of a classifier. Given new data x, this method makes predictions. Again, essential for any classifier, and therefore a required method by Classifier Mixin. This assesses the model's performance using data x and labels y. While incredibly useful, it's not mandated by Classifier Mixin itself. Subclasses often add this, leveraging the predict method. This method is used for data transformation, not classification. It belongs to a different Sklearn Mixin, transformer Mixin not classifier Mixin It's not related to the classification interface at all. I'm looking at the Sklearn library, specifically the Classifier Mixin. It's a blueprint for creating classifiers. We're trying to figure out which methods must be present in any class built using this blueprint. This question is a direct test of your knowledge. We need to pinpoint the essential functions every classifier built using Classifier Mixin will have. The score method assesses a classifier's performance. While extremely common, it's not mandatory. A class might use Classifier Mixin without explicitly implementing this scoring method. This method is used for data transformation, not classification. It's not part of the Classifier Mixin and would be found in a different kind of class, like those that use transformer Mixin This is a core function. Any classifier needs to predict outcomes, so this method is absolutely essential and part of Classifier Mixin The fit method is how a classifier learns from data, training. Since every classifier must be trained, this method is a non-negotiable requirement of Classifier Mixin This quiz challenges you to identify which methods are guaranteed to exist in any class that inherits from scikit-learn's classifier Mixin. I'll explain what this means and how to solve it. Let's dive in. We're looking for the methods that must be present in any class that uses classifier Mixin as its parent class. This is crucial for understanding the structure and behavior of classifiers in scikit-learn. The fit x, y method is used to train the classifier. X represents the input data, and y represents the corresponding labels or target variables. This method is guaranteed to be available because it's fundamental to training any classifier. The predict x method is the core of the classifier. It uses the trained model to make predictions on new, unseen data, x. This method is also guaranteed because making predictions is the primary purpose of a classifier. The score, x, y, method calculates a performance metric for the classifier. While incredibly useful, it's not required by classifier Mixin. Individual classifiers will often provide a score method, but it's an addition, not a core part of the classifier Mixin contract. The transform, x, method is related to data transformations, not classification. It belongs to transformer Mixin a separate base class. Therefore, you won't find it guaranteed in classifier Mixin based classes. Options A and B, fit, x, y, and predict, x, are the correct answers. These are the essential methods that define the fundamental interface of any classifier inheriting from classifier Mixin. Options C and D are incorrect because while they might be commonly used, they're not mandated by the classifier Mixin interface. I'm focusing on the Classifiermixin class in scikit-learn, a popular Python library for machine learning. This class is like a blueprint for creating classifiers, algorithms that can sort data into categories. I'll examine which functions are always available in any class built using this blueprint. This function trains the classifier. X represents the data, and Y represents the correct categories for that data. Think of it as showing the classifier examples to learn from. After training, I use this to have the classifier guess the category for new data, X. It's the heart of a classifier, its ability to make predictions. This function assesses how well the classifier performs. It compares predictions with actual categories. It's incredibly useful, but not mandatory for every classifier built using Classifiermixin. This function is about changing data, not classifying it. It belongs to a different scikit-learn class, Transformermixin, and isn't part of the Classifiermixin contract. This quiz tests your knowledge of the Classifiermixin class in scikit-learn, a popular Python library for machine learning. We'll figure out which methods are always available in classes that inherit from it. Let's find out which methods a class must have if it inherits from Classifiermixin. This means they are a fundamental part of the contract for any classifier built this way. The fit, x, y, method is essential. It's how you train your classifier. X represents your data features, and Y represents the corresponding labels or targets. Any classifier needs a way to learn from data, and this is it. Think of it like teaching a dog a new trick. You show it examples, x, and what the desired outcome is, y. Once you've trained your classifier using fit, x, y, you'll use predict, x, to make predictions on new, unseen data. This is the main job of a classifier. This is like asking your newly trained dog to perform the trick you taught it. You give it a situation, x, and it tells you what it thinks will happen. The score, x, y, method is usually used to see how well your classifier performs. While it's common, it's not something that every classifier using Classifiermixin absolutely has to have. It depends on the specific implementation of the classifier itself. Think of it as an optional performance evaluation, not a core requirement. The transform, X, method is not related to classifiers. It's for data transformers, things that change the way data looks, not things that make predictions. Classifiermixin focuses solely on classification. It's like asking a chef to predict the weather, not cook food. Methods guaranteed in a class inheriting from Classifiermixin are those that are absolutely essential for its functionality. Those which must be implemented. Those methods define the core behavior of any classifier built upon it. A method that is not guaranteed means it's not a mandatory part of the Classifiermixin contract. A class inheriting from it might or might not implement these methods. The inclusion is optional and depends on the specific classifier implementation. I'm focusing on the core methods that any class inheriting from scikit-learn's classifier Mixin must have. These methods define the essential behavior for a classifier. This method trains the classifier. You give it the input data, X, and corresponding labels or targets, Y. And it learns the patterns to make predictions. Think of it as the learning phase. After training with fit, you use this to make predictions on new, unseen data, X. The classifier uses what it learned during the training to make educated guesses about the labels of the new data. I'll explain this one again, since it's a key part of building a classifier. Fit, X, Y. Is the method used to train the classifier model. The X represents the features, and Y represents the target variable. This is absolutely crucial and mandatory. This is where the magic happens. After training your model with fit, you feed it new data, X, and it uses what it's learned to generate predictions. This is also a fundamental, mandatory method. This is a handy method to evaluate model performance. It's not strictly required to be part of a classifier Mixin though it's super common. It measures how well your classifier is doing. This method is used for transforming data and is associated with transformer Mixin not classifier Mixin It's not relevant to the question and is not required. This is the main question. We need to identify which methods are guaranteed to be available in a class that inherits from classifier Mixin We're looking for essential parts of the classifier's interface.